Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi, Tractate Masechet Teruma Daf 33 Amud A. If the halacha of standing and valuation is already mentioned with regard to non-kosher animal, how do we know the meaning of the verse? And if it be any non-kosher animal, Hama ani makayim ve'im kol abahim v'cholu. The commentators explain that one cannot say the opposite, i.e. that the verse, and it may be any non-kosher animal. And if it be any non-kosher animal, of which they may not bring an offering unto the Lord, it's referring to a non-kosher animal. Whereas the verse, and if it be a non-kosher animal, then he shall redeem it, and dealing with a blemish, a blemish animal. This is because the verse refers specifically to a non-kosher animal, of which they may not bring an offering unto the Lord. While the second verse states only a non-kosher animal. This indicates that the first verse is referring to an animal that is qualified when it is offering to the Lord, but is permitted in consumption. Therefore, it must be dealing with a blemished animal, and that's from the Tosfot, in which they may not bring an offering unto the Lord, and then he shall set the animal before the priest, and the priest shall value it. The verse is referring to blemished animals, which are unfit for sacrifice, just as non-kosher animals, and teaches that they can be redeemed. The Bible continues, one might have thought that any blemished animal can be redeemed, even a temporary blemish. Therefore, the verse states non-kosher animal, of which they may not bring an offering, which indicates that only a blemished animal that may not be sacrificed at all, I the permanent blemish is redeemed. This animal with a temporary blemish is thereby excluded, as it may not be sacrificed today, but it may be sacrificed tomorrow. The Gemara concludes its reasoning, and the most one states, the one should perform standing and valuation for a blemished animal according to the verse, and then he shall set the animal before the priest, and the priest shall value it. Since the verse requires that the animal have a permanent blemish to be redeemed, it must be referring to an animal consecrated for the altar, as all animals consecrated for temple maintenance may be redeemed, even blemished ones. Furthermore, as this is an unattributed braita that appears in the Sifra, it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, the dispute of Rabbi Shimon, and therefore it follows the opinion of the rabbis of the Mishnah. It may therefore be concluded from the braita that the rabbis hold that one redeemed an animal consecrated for the altar with standing and valuation, as maintained by Rabbi Yochanan. And the Gemara analyzes the opinion of Reish Lakish. Rav Gidol said that Rav said, what is the reasoning of Reish Lakish? Amar Rav Gida Amar Rav Umayta Amar the Reish Lakish. The later commentaries note that it is unusual for Rav to explain the reasoning of the younger Reish Lakish. They therefore suggest that the statement of Rav was not issued in response to Reish Lakish, rather it represents his own explanation of the opinion of the rabbis, which happens to occur with the explanation of Reish Lakish. Since the Gemara is discussing the dispute between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, it cites the opinion of Rav as an explanation of the opinion of Reish Lakish, and that's from the Yavuz, who said that according to the rabbis, animals consecrated for temple maintenance were included in the halacha of standing and valuation, whereas animals consecrated for the altar were not included in the halacha of standing and valuation. The reasoning is that the verse states, then he shall set the animal before the priest, and the priest shall value it, whether it be bad or good or bad. Leviticus 27:12. The Rav explained what is an item for which halacha is not divided between good and bad, like where there is no difference between unblemished and blemished animals. You must say that this is an item consecrated for temple maintenance, which has the same sanctity whether blemished or unblemished. And the verse states, and the priest shall value it. The restricted term it serves to exclude animals consecrated for the altar from the halacha of standing and valuation. The Gemara asks, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that according to the rabbis, animals consecrated for the altar are also including the obligation of standing and valuation, the term it serves to exclude what? The Gemara responds, it serves to exclude from the halacha of standing and valuation an animal that was blemished from the outside was consecrated for the altar. The Gemara raised the difficulty. But this is problematic according to the Tana of the school of Levi, who said that even an animal that was blemished from the outside is including the halacha of standing and valuation. As Levi taught, everything was included in the halacha of standing and valuation, even an animal blemished from the outside. And Levi, this is Levi ben Sisi, one of the sages of Yisrael in the transitional generation between the Tanaim and the Amoraim. He was the preeminent disciple of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, redactor of the Mishnah, and would sit before him and engage in study of halacha with the rest of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's prominent disciples. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi held him in high regard and sent to him Simonius to serve as judge and teacher. He described him as a man like me. There are several sources that relate that he walked with a limp, which he acquired as a result of attempting to demonstrate before Rabbi Huda how the high priest would bow. The Gemara also relates that this was a punishment for speaking impertinently before God. Levi edited anthologies of Baitot. They are introduced with the phrase, they taught in school Levi. Levi moved to Babylonia later in life. He renewed his acquaintance there with Rav, with whom he studied before studying with Rabbi Huda, and he became a close friend of Abba Ba'Abba. Shmuel's father Shmuel became a disciple colleague of his. The Rambam ruled in accordance with the opinion of Levi, even in disputes with Rav and Shmuel, and because Levi was greater than they were. It is not clear whether he had children or not. Some hold that Bad, like Levi mentioned in the Gemara, is his son. Others hold that Rabbi Yehuda ben Levi was his son, but there is no clear evidence for that conclusion. And Levi likewise taught in his Bible that even an undomesticated animal, and even birds that are not brought as offerings, e.g. geese, are included in a halacha of standing and valuation, but isn't it written it must have to exclude some animal from the obligation of standing and valuation? If so, like an Levi teacher that included everything, the Gemara concludes, indeed this poses a difficulty. The Gemara discusses the opinion of Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda said, that Rav said, what was the reason of Rabbi Shimon, who said that animals consecrated to the altar were included in the halacha of standing and valuation, and therefore they died without redemption. If they die without redemption, they are buried. But animals consecrated to temple maintenance were not included in this halacha. As the verse states, then he shall set the animal before the priest, and the priest shall value it, whether it be good or bad. Leviticus 27:11-12. What is an item for which the halacha is divided between good and bad, either between a blemished and unblemished and blemished animal? You must say that this is an animal consecrated for the altar, and the verse states, and the priest shall value it, which serves to exclude animals consecrated for temple maintenance from the halacha of standing and valuation of Gemara asks. If so, that the verse is referring to a consecration for which there is a distinction between good and bad, then it should have stated, and the priest shall value it between good and bad, to indicate that this distinction is made. The term whether it be good or bad indicates that the two types have the same halacha, as claimed by the rabbis. The Gemara concludes this poses a difficulty for the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. The Gemara raises an objection to the opinions of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish from a Baita with regard to consecrated animals that died. If they were blemished, they are not redeemed and shall be buried, and if they were blemished, they can be redeemed. In what case is this said? It is said with regard to animals consecrated for the altar, but with regard to animals consecrated for temple maintenance, with unblemished animals should be buried. This is the statement of the rabbis. Rabbi Shimon says, both in a case where the animals that died were consecrated for the altar, and in the case where they were consecrated for temple maintenance, if they were blemished, they can be buried, and if they were blemished, they can be redeemed. This is apparently a conclusive refutation of the statement of Rabbi Yochanan from the first quote of the Bible. As Rabbi Yochanan holds that according to the rabbis, both animals consecrated for the altar and those consecrated for temple maintenance are included in the halacha of standing and valuation, and not buried if they died. The Gemara answers that Rabbi Yochanan could say to you, what are we dealing with here? We are dealing with an animal that was blemished from the outset. In such a case, the rabbis rule that the animal would not include a halacha of standing and valuation, and it is therefore redeemed if it dies. But a consecrated animal that subsequently was blemished and died must be buried. The Gemara adds, so too is reasonable that the Bible is discussing animals blemished from the outset, as if you say they refer to animals whose consecration preceded their blemishes, then Rabbi Shimon should disagree with the rabbis on this point and maintain that such blemished animals consecrated for the altar should be buried, not redeemed. After all, Rabbi Shimon holds that animals consecrated for the altar are included in halacha of standing and valuation. Rather, one must not conclude from this that the bride is dealing with the animal that was blemished from the outset. The Gemara raises a difficulty, but if the bride is referring to animals blemished from the outset, and for this reason the rabbis hold that the animal is redeemed, then it must be inferred that the rabbis maintain that if the animal developed the blemish after its consecration and died, it must be buried. If so, let us say that the Braita is a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Reish Lakish, who maintains that according to the rabbis, animals consecrated for the altar were not included in halacha of standing and valuation and are redeemed if they died. The Gemara responds, Reish Lakish interprets the Braita as referring to animals whose consecration preceded their blemishes. Consequently, the statement of the rabbis is in accordance with the opinion that the animals consecrated for the altar were not included in halacha of standing and valuation and are therefore redeemed if they died. The Gemara asks, if so, then the earlier question recurs. As Rabbi Shimon should disagree with the statement of the rabbis and say that such blemished animals consecrated for the altar are buried. The Gemara answers, Reish Lakish reverses the text of that Braita. He maintains that in that Braita, Rabbi Shimon explicitly states and animals consecrated to the altar are buried, whether they are unblemished, or blemished. And he raises his objection to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan from another bite, said like this: with regard to consecrated animals that died, whether they were unblemished or blemished, they should be buried. With regard to what case is this ruling stated? It is stated with regard to animals consecrated for the altar, but in the case of animals consecrated for temple maintenance, they can be redeemed. This is the statement of the rabbi. The Bible continues. Rabbi Shimon says, with regard to animals consecrated for temple maintenance that died, if they were unblemished, they should be buried, and if they were blemished, they can be redeemed. This is apparently a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan from the latter clause of the statement of the rabbis in his Baita. According to the Baita, the rabbis rule that animals consecrated for the altar are redeemed, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, the rabbis maintain that animals consecrated for the altar are buried. There's one answer that Rabbi Yochanan could say to you: what are we dealing with here? We are dealing with an animal that was blemished from the outset. The Gemara notes, so too it is reasonable that the Baita is referring to animals blemished from the outset, and if you say that it is dealing with animals whose consecration preceded their blemishes, and the rabbis hold that animals consecrated for temple maintenance are buried, whereas those consecrated for the altar are redeemed, and then Rabbi Shimon should disagree with the statement of the rabbis on both counts, rather than disagree merely in the case of animals consecrated for temple maintenance. The Gemara asks, let us say that the Baita is a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Reish Lakish, as Rabbi Shimon does not disagree with the rabbis in the case of animals consecrated for the altar. And the Gemara answers that Reish Lakish could say to you, what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with animals whose consecration preceded their blemishes. The Gemara reiterates, but in that case, Rabbi Shimon should disagree with the rabbis. The Gemara responds, Reish Lakish could say to you, indeed, Rabbi Shimon disagrees with the rabbis, even with regard to animals consecrated to the altar. The Baita mentions Rabbi Shimon's opinion only with regard to consecration for temple maintenance, but he also disagreed with regard to consecration for the altar. The Gemara further discusses the dispute between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yemin said to Rabbi Zera, according to Reish Lakish, who says that according to the rabbis, animals consecrated for the altar would not include an halach of tanning and variation, and it is told with regard to animals consecrated for the altar that blemished animals can be redeemed, and we established that according to Reish Lakish, the price is dealing with the animals consecrated preceded their blemishes. This goes into the next onward, which means that although the animal has an inherent sanctity, because it was consecrated when unblemished, nevertheless can be redeemed. Let's conclude from the Baita that one may redeem sacrificial animals in order to feed them to dogs. So that was the end of Amud A. Wish you a good day, and thanks for listening. All the best. Bye.